Thank you so much for coming again in this sweltering summer, the second day of summer, right? And I guess we cannot, okay. Anyway, so I tended to talk too long. So today I'm determined to make my talk short and sweet, if that's possible, but unfortunately, the technical problems are going to delay my talk, and I'm going to try to make it even more succinct than I have been prepared. Thank you so much. So the title I originally gave was Durer's Apocalypse, is late medieval piety and anxiety about the end of the world. And then I added a question mark so that I can actually add other scholarly interpretations about Durer's famous apocalypse, including a few of my own personal scholarly interest and the research. So there's one change, question mark. Yeah. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Albrecht Durer. In the past, yes, okay. So he's either very familiar artist to you or not very well known, mainly because he's a German artist, I think. When you talk about Renaissance and Baroque art, we tended to focus Italian and then Dutch, right? But Albrecht Durer is, in fact, very, very renowned artist. He is often compared with Leonardo da Vinci, so it's sometimes called as a Leonardo of the North. Albrecht Durer was born in Nuremberg in Holy Roman Empire, today's Germany, in 1471. And he was one of the many first in Northern European art. He was the first artist who traveled extensively to Italy to study art, although there are numerous other minor artists who traveled there for business reasons and then also stayed there as a migrant artist. But Durer was the first major artist who seemed to have gone across the Alps to really study art and learn what was going on. And he synthesized what he learned in Italian art with Northern Renaissance art, which tended to more focus on observations of nature rather than focusing more on theory, as we know of Italian Renaissance art. And he's also a painter. As you see in this self-portrait, he has amazing paintings that include numerous portraits, self-portraits, portraits, and altarpieces. But today, he's probably also best known for his graphic works that encompass engravings, etchings, and woodcuts. And he was also an art theorist who wrote 3 major treatises related to art in the 1520s, based on his learning, trying to find the secrets of art made by Italian artists. He was an incredibly important artist who was truly influential during his time period and after his death. His legacy was never forgotten after his death as well. And he was also, you can say he was a true Renaissance man in many sense because his interests were so diverse and so ahead of the time. He made also numerous drawings like this based on observation of nature for no other reason than probably pleasure and interest in nature itself. And of course, some of the best known works and really give great pleasure to many graphic artists and scholars like me are those engravings. Like this one from 1514 shows incredible skills and technical know-hows in creating such believable naturalistic depictions, all with black lines and dots. And he was truly the first artist who made engravings and woodcuts as truly amazing artistic media. Before Dürer, there was another German artist, Martin Schongauer, who already advanced this technique of etching, engraving, as you see here. But then when you compare with Dürer's, that was made only about 5 years later, right? I don't have to explain further to show how much progress Dürer made within 5 years. Especially with woodcut medium, he made such quantum leap with his works that he started to produce around 1495 when he just opened his workshop. It's incredible. And this is just one example from the Apocalypse series, which will be the focus of this talk. You can see that the use of his monogram. Dürer was very self-conscious. He wanted to document everything he wrote, painted, and thought in his lifetime. And so we have unusual number of writings and drawings with this monogram, and a lot of times later on with the dates on them. And this monogram he started to add in throughout his career on his paintings as well as his printed media, consisting of Roman letters A and D. The initials of artists continue to appear as you see here. That he first started to use in 1496. And 1496 is the year he started to create 15 woodcuts that are included in this Apocalypse series, as you will further see. So again, first I want to quickly illustrate how much progress, again, he made with the woodcut, especially with the Apocalypse. During the woodcut started to emerge as an artistic as a medium around 1420s, and again the German invention. And it's this book published by Anton Koberger, who was, by the way, Dürer's godfather and the most important printer publisher in Germany, with distribution centers in 18 different cities in Europe, published this book, which was one of the most ambitious books with almost 200 illustrations. Published in the same, the native city of Dürer, published in 1491, and the illustrations were made in the workshop where Dürer was apprenticed. And look at these works, and then this is another illustration from the same book, and compare Dürer's works. Do you see woodcuts before Dürer were mainly focusing on the contour lines? And the modeling was done only with very short hatchings, as you see here. But then now look at yours in 1496 to 8. Then you can see that all the lines are so vibrant, almost undulating. And it's no longer just a simple contour lines, and the graphic artist is trying to make some sort of modeling effect with the short lines. And here we even sense that there is a depth to it with these various lines that are not only just following the contours to define forms, but then we also see these cloud lines. And all these lines, the horizontal lines, creating the sense of movement and energy, giving a sense that these the 4 horsemen and these horses actually moving. It creates not only the forms, but energy and the depth too, the forms by differentiating the depth and the width between the lines as well. So just wanted to show you first how Dürer innovated and galvanized this medium, the woodcut medium, that before him was considered just a crude medium, not really truly artistic medium. But Dürer completely changed this from around 1496. And he actually printed a lot of different small and large woodcuts. But the most, and including the works with classical subject matters, but truly the apocalypse was clearly his main focus. It was an investment on artist's part, and it was a very, very ambitious project that I'm gonna talk to you further. And in fact, just to give you a short summary, this was the series that made him an international name. After 1498, Durer became an internationally well-known artist throughout Europe. And very often it is said that it's because Durer's monogram was recognizable. And it's just only because of the intrinsic artistic values, but I have different views. And it's because Durer actually published this as a book. And it actually has 15 woodcuts, and they are printed as a book. And this is also not only as a breakthrough of the artist's career, but it's also regarded as a very important book because it was designed, illustrated, and published by artist himself. And we're going to talk about the economic side later on. But first of all, the reason I chose this subject is not only because this is the artist to whom my whole graduate career was devoted, but also we have a woodcut from Apocalypse series. This one scene that shows the 7 angels with the 7 trumpets that you can come and see later. But if you see, come closer and look closely, then you can see a ghost image of the letters, the text that is printed on the back. Okay? So this book actually was published in 2 different editions, one in German and one in Latin. And it starts with the title page. So this is the title page of the Latin edition, Apocalypse cum figuris, Apocalypse with figures. And this is a facsimile edition showing a German edition, say Die heimliche Offenbarung Johannes, the secret revelation of John. And then when you open it, okay, and then inside there's a text like this. So first it opens, and there is a St. Jerome's preface to this last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. And he printed this separately. And then from here on, he printed the illustration on the recto. And then when you open it, on the back, oops, it's not that easy. The text is printed on the back. So throughout, the 15 illustrations are shown in this manner. Print on one side and the text on the back. So at first, the text and image correspond very well. But then, as the print series as you open pages, and then that correspondence between text and image started to not really match anymore. Probably because you had the difficulties of printing the text on the one side, and then trying to match that with the image. So whenever when there is this, the image appears in the next page, Durer actually indicates to look at this image. Okay? But then the text was, as you know, the printing press was invented around 1453, and with Gutenberg's invention, the text books started to be available much cheaper, although at first they were still quite expensive. In fact, Nuremberg, where Durer was born and active, was one of the major printing, publishing centers in Germany. And Durer borrowed the typefaces from his godfather, Anton Koberger. But he acted as his own self-publisher of these important books. And if you see, the very fact that Durer had to invest so much money for publishing this work. It shows that he had certain intentions. I mean, if you just sell these prints by itself, you would be able to recoup. Oh, sorry, that was my. He could recoup his investment quickly, but think about the very fact that he had to borrow typefaces and then put them all together and then sell them. So he had to distribute. So it means that it takes a longer time for Durer to recoup. So there must be some important reasons why he had to do this, right? So we're gonna go back to that. But first of all, I want to just show you the basic, the images first of those 15 images and what they're about. As you may or may not know, the book of Revelation, the very last book in the Bible, is very mysterious and very controversial and very difficult to decipher. It always was so, and it drew attention from many different theologians in the past and the present. And Durer tried to really make this very difficult text visible. Whenever possible, he tried to describe the most dramatic scenes described in this visionary book in which John writes what he saw in his vision on the island of Patmos. But then this first image does not really illustrate what is in the book, but this is more like the portrait of the author of the book of Revelation. So this is supposed to be St. John, corresponding to St. Jerome's, the 4th century St. Jerome, who made the first Vulgate Bible. He wrote an introduction of St. John the Evangelist, and this is what is describing. But the first scene, the first woodcut that actually depicts the first chapter of the Revelation is this image, the vision of 7 candlesticks. It shows how John, who heard a large voice, appeared in a white garment on rainbow, and his eyes were burning like a fire, and he actually shows like the eyes are burning. Fire with the light coming out from him. And from his mouth, he writes, he saw sword coming out of his mouth. And in one hand, he held 7 stars. And so this very mysterious scenes that John describes in his book, Durer tried to visualize them. And in it also, he said he saw 7 large candlesticks. So we see on the foreground large candlesticks that look very German, and the kind of the candlesticks the goldsmiths in Nuremberg were making. In fact, Durer's father was a goldsmith who would have made this type of very elaborate Gothic candlelights. So this is one of the most famous scenes that in the woodcut series because of this powerful condensed depiction of the first scene or chapter in the book of Revelation. And then the second part, here we see John again experiencing this mystery vision. And he saw a man seen, understood as Christ, appearing surrounded by, again, 7 fire candles or light, surrounded by 24 elders. And he's experiencing it. And this is John, again, the narrator of the book of Revelation. And he's surrounded by clouds, showing that this is a heavenly vision. And then on the bottom, we see a landscape that looks almost as though this is a German landscape. Yeah? And again, see that how here we see Durer is trying to visualize the different events described in different chapters in the Revelation. Like in these two scenes, those are more condensed, and so it does not depict various chapters and verses in the Revelation, but in some other illustrations that you will see are more complex. And it's usually regarded that the woodcuts that include many different episodes all together probably he created them earlier in this 3-year period. Anyway, so another very powerful and well-known image in the apocalypse include these 4 horsemen, in which we see the 4 apocalyptic horsemen, the conquest, war, famine, and death that are riding horses and then passing through, devastating everyone that's on its path. And Durer shows not only just ordinary man being devastated by this apocalyptic event, but it also shows a pope being swallowed by this mouth of hell. So I don't know how familiar you are with the book of Revelation, but it's supposed to be very terrifying and horrific events that scare you, thinking about the possible the last judgment day, in which 1/3 of the humanities are supposed to be killed, right? And another scene in which we see a few different depictions in the book, in the text, are depicted all together in this one scene. We see here when the 5th seal was opened, the martyrs of John saw martyrs underneath the altar, to whom the angels are distributing white robes. And he heard they want revenge. And then on the bottom, and we also, when the 6th seal opened, the sun turned into black, moon turned into blood, and the stars were falling, and again, devastating and killing the people on earth. Yeah? This is not the benevolent God story that John saw. But again, as you can see, when you actually read the text of Revelation, with this image, you can see how people who are looking at this and reading the text could have imagined the kind of apocalyptic events would happen. And that's what Durer is doing here. And again, just to show you what kind of advancement in visualizing these horrendous events, if we compare Durer's source, which is this small woodcuts that were first used by a printer Quentel in Cologne, and which was recycled many other times later by other publishers, including Koberger in 1485, you can really see how Durer made this vision so real and vibrant, making the viewer to be able to imagine with a stronger sense of reality. It's like watching horror movies of the 1920s or the 30s, and then seeing all these gory horror movies with a CGI effect now. And in fact, Durer's prints, now they may appear to be very old-fashioned, but they were very modern and very new with this sense of reality. And other scenes, like the 5th scene that is representing the text of the Revelation, shows the 4 angels holding the winds. The 4 angels are supposed to be holding those 4 winds here, and we see here one angel making a cross sign to 144,000 elders, so they are the ones who are elected. And then here, the 6th scene shows adoration of the Lamb, who actually had 7 eyes and 7 horns, and they're surrounded by 4 creatures that also correspond to the 4 evangelists. And then these creatures are also covered with eyes, as John describes in the text. And here we see the elders and the martyrs with the palms. He sees again in his vision standing on the Patmos, the island of Patmos, where he's supposed to saw this vision and wrote down what he saw in the scripture. And then on the next one, the seventh scene depicting this, representing the text is this scene: 7 angels with the trumpets, as described in the Apocalypse chapter 9. And this is our print you are seeing here. And here, again, it actually has multiple different verses that Durer tried to translate into an image here. We see God distributing 7 trumpets to angels who appear in different stages of accepting and using. And we also see an angel, again, all described in the text. Angel is throwing censer here. And as described in the text again, a star called wormwood is falling into the well and poisoning the water. And we see also 1/3 of the sea and the earth being burned by fire. And we also see a mountain falling from the sky. And literally, we see hands coming out from the cloud, from the heaven. And again, creating this apocalyptic event on earth. And so, as you can see here, this event's happening 4 days, and we see, again, the inclusion of sun and moon to indicate the length of time. So what's here is clear is that as a graphic artist using 2-dimensional medium does not have time to show. I mean, the lapse of time, how do you create the the time you need to read the verses and to and then put them all together on 2-dimensional surface? You have to imagine of the time that is required to read. And then so here you see that you're going to see one part, and then you're going to see another parts of this. And then so following these events that are described in the book. And the next, the 8th image representing the text is this scene showing angels avenging the people on the earth. And we also see the God, again, distributing the trumpets. The 9th thing is this scene that's very famous, showing John actually literally devouring the book given by angel with the face of a star, clouds as the body, and then the pillars of a fire. So it's an ingenious and literal description of what's written in the text. And the John, again, was writing down his vision. It was interrupted by this angel, and he's devouring another book given by this angel, meaning that he's really sinking in and observing what he saw here. And again, this is like Durer's imagination that gives the visual representation of what is written in word. The 10th scene is this scene showing apocalyptic woman that Christians, the theologians, identified as the Virgin Mary that John saw. And the woman was giving a birth, but then the dragon with the seven heads with the 10 horns tried to devour the baby she was giving birth by throwing up water. But he's miraculously saved by angels and taken up to God. And then this dragon's tail is hitting stars, and they're going to fall again. So he's describing in this manner. And then we can also see this Virgin Mary, who's the apocalyptic woman, dressed in sun, is shown, wearing like a mandala behind her. And then her the wings are imagined as wings of eagle here, and she's again wearing 7 stars as a crown. The next scene shows a little bit quieter. The earth is it's not intact, but he sees this vision in which Saint Michael is fighting the dragon in the heaven. It's a heavenly battle, so therefore he shows the earth being quiet and the events taking place in the sky by creating kind of different divisions between the two. Saint Michael is slaying a dragon, and his allies of angels are also killing other monstrous creatures you see here. And then the 12th scene shows the beast with the 2 horns like lamb appearing on earth, and the 7-headed dragon again coming out from the earth, and also other angels appearing with a sickle and a cross coming down, and we see people on earth idolizing this dragon here. And then finally, another scene that is shown and very open illustrated is this Babylonian horse scene. This is supposed to be one of the first woodcuts in this series that Durer made. And here we see a lot of different chapters depicted together. We see a dragon on which Babylonian whore holding the blood of the martyrs in her hand. And we see kings and also the chevaliers, the aristocrats, and the Pope all depicted on the side worshiping her. And then meanwhile, here we see the army of the knights faithful appearing to again revenge the humankind. And we also see an angel pointing out the city of Babylon that is being destroyed. So here, this scene has lots of different episodes that are all condensed together in one scene. The final scene is this that actually, angel, not angle, that shows how St. Michael captures this monster, the Satan, with a collar and then chained, and then gonna put into the bottomless pit, and that where the Satan will be kept for 1,000 years. And meanwhile, the God will reign the New Jerusalem that is shown to John by angel, as we see here in the background. Okay, so because there are 15 images, I couldn't, I think I was very quick, I was trying to summarize very quickly, but it's like the iconography is quite complex. And although this is such a well-known woodcut series and has been studied for so long, what this series as a whole means have been variously studied and proposed. Many people have seen this as it was published in 1498 as a sign that Durer, just like Luther or Erasmus, those more rational people, believed that end of the world is coming. In Europe, around 1000 or year 1000 or year 1200, 1300 or 1500, there was an anxiety, the end of the world is coming. There was this continuous recurrence of millenarian beliefs. And in fact, around 1500, there was this huge anxiety among Christians that they're seeing the omens and signs of the second coming of Christ. And with that, people were interested in the very book describing the second coming of Christ in the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation. So people have argued that this could be Durer made this apocalypse series because he believed in the apocalyptic event happening, possibly around the 1500s. But then other scholars have noted that in many of those 15 images, we see popes included. Do you remember how the hell, in the mouth of hell, pope with this meter was being dragged into? And there were a lot of also kings, as well as popes, and the cardinals appearing in this series. So it was seen as possibly showing Durer's anti-papal message. Okay, sorry. But then the reason why that theory has been put forward is that Durer's Apocalypse series became the models for illustrating the Book of Revelation for Reformation Bibles, like Martin Luther's September Testament, of 1522, include illustrations for the Book of Revelation. Book of Revelation is the only scripture in the Bible of the New Testament that includes illustrations. And that were based on Durer's. Although Durer's prints are not always adhering to what's written in the text, so people wondered whether Durer really had these anti-papal messages. But when you actually look at his earlier sources, we can see that Durer actually followed the traditional iconography that was used before. But then, because there are these clear, recurring images of popes, it was seen as Durer being millenarian and anti-papal rather than just being pious and following the established iconography of depicting the Revelation scenes. So, what I'm actually very interested in and what I have been studying a great deal was thinking about why did Durer decide to make such an ambitious project in 1498 when he was 27. Right? Well, he was very young. And why did he decide to choose this particular book? And of course, on the one hand, I believe that Durer was tapping into this popularity and fear of the end of the world coming. But he may not have actually believed in that very fear. So, one of the things that I have been researching and writing and publishing was thinking about Durer's business sense. What Durer did was to make a book, you really needed to invest a lot of money first. And then you can recoup when you sell them. So what I have noticed is that by around 1497, Durer hired 2 traveling agents. And they were sent to Rome and other parts in Italy. And there were very detailed contracts. So it shows that Durer was preparing the sales and distribution of this apocalypse that will be published. And this is time before copyright was well established. So without selling these prints very quickly, you will get your works pirated by other artists. It was very, very common because the copyright issues was not established yet. He had seen this while he was working as an apprentice in Nuremberg and as a journeyman in different cities like Basel and Strasbourg, which were also very important publishing cities at the time. And there he worked as illustrators for books published by the major publishing companies in those towns. So he had seen that how quickly other artists copy the prints as well as books made with a lot of investments and money paid for designers. It was very quick. If you publish some sensational popular book, and then within like 5-6 months, other artists made exact copies, and then a little bit rougher, than the original, and then print it, and then sell it. Then you have to compete with these pirates, but it's harder because you already invest so much money to pay for the illustrator, etc. So what I noticed is that Durer was not necessarily thinking about the real end of the world was coming, but he was tapping into the fear and the popularity to create these works. Another aspect that I'm very interested in is that I see Durer's Apocalypse series as more of reflection of Christian humanism. As you know, Renaissance humanists did not see any contradictions between classical learning, humanism, and their Christianity. And in fact, the humanism was a very, very important aspect. They studied like a 4th century, 5th century church fathers' writings to understand better the Bible. So they were learning Greek, Latin, and Hebrew to understand the original text that had been badly translated and misunderstood over during the medieval period, and then to understand better. And in fact, Durer was a part of this Nuremberg intellectuals, humanists. And I see that in this series, we can actually discern the aspects of the humanist concerns, thinking about various aspects of the Bible, especially the Apocalypse. So how that came about. So first of all, Durer's Apocalypse was so popular that Durer had to reissue the Apocalypse in 1511. So in the 1498, he published the German and Latin editions, but in 1511, he only published Latin text, meaning that his major audience was well-educated, Latin-reading, international audience. And this is the the title page of the second edition in Latin. As you can see, by pushing up that title, very elaborate one, that is actually carved into the woodcut rather than using type font, because this huge type font didn't exist. And then added an illustration here showing St. John the Evangelist with his evangelical attribute, eagle, seeing the apocalyptic woman on crescent moon. But then, this is a very well-known image, and very often when books illustrate the title page, it actually shows this one. But this is only from the 1511. Then what I noticed here is that when you actually look at the images within the Apocalypse that Durer originally created, we only see St. John mostly from side or 3/4. And he's young and wearing long curly hair. Do you see? Right? He actually appears 7 times in the scene. And every time he appears, he looks like this. Curly, long hair, and young. But then when you look at St. John on this frontispiece on the title page, he looks different, right? So I started to wonder, why did Durer show St. John in this different manner? Now he has a beard, shorter hair, right? And he literally doesn't look like St. John. And also, the fact of the matter is that the book of Revelation has been questioned about its evangelicity, or whether this was really written by St. John the Evangelist from the 3rd century, basically. So the Greek Orthodox Church does not accept the Revelation as a part of the Bible. Because in the book, John only says himself as John, not as John the Evangelist. The authority that gives this as St. John, none other than St. John, is actually the church authority. And when you actually look back in the history, like the 4th and 5th century, when there were severe millenarian movements, there were questions about, they tended to focus more on the book of Revelation. So the church fathers had to create a consensus. This is St. John. This John in the book of Revelation is St. John, none other than St. John the Evangelist. Then whenever millenarian movements were strong, because they tended to focus on this, there were also questions. This is not really, it does not go with other evangelist writings. There were always the questions. And St. Jerome made it very clear that this is St. John the Evangelist that narrates his visions in the Bible. So, again, if we see here, another thing I have noticed is that when John appears in the scene, I see that he's always shown in particular ways. In the first part of the book of the Apocalypse, he's shown as a part of the heavenly vision. And in the second part, he's shown as being on the earth, right? Whenever we see cloud, it shows that this is a part of the visionary vision, rather than actually he's on the earth. But then there is the changes. And also, I find the fact that whenever St. John is shown in Durer's, he actually is shown the importance of a book in relation to him is diminished compared to traditional iconography. And what I also notice is that, as you mentioned earlier, Durer used the older images, traditional images, as his models. And when we see St. John being depicted at the start of the Bible, like the Quentin Bible, what is emphasized is the fact that he was a martyr and he was writing the book on the island of Patmos, as you will see here. And then we see the first vision being depicted. Okay. And when we see St. John the Evangelist as author, we always see him again writing, just like other evangelists. This was the most popular way of representing St. John the Evangelist as the author of the book of Revelation. And in other popular engravings of the 15th century too, we see him writing book on the island of Patmos. The indication that he is on this Greek island of Patmos is indicated by this body of water in the background, right? And yet, when Durer indicates that St. John the Evangelist, as the author of this book, he does not include the body of water. So that's again showing that Durer probably did not believe that this is a book by St. John the Baptist and questioning the very validity of the identification of St. John, who's narrating his vision in the book, as the St. John, he questions the identification of John as St. John the Evangelist. And this is made clear by his woodcuts, by differentiating the two. Here, on the title of 1511, he's shown with the evangelical symbols as though he's acknowledging. But there's a discrepancy between the images of John within the series and this addition. So, how does this thesis come about? Actually, by 1519 and 20, like a humanist like Erasmus of Rotterdam and Luther wrote in their private writings that they have questions about believing St. John the Evangelist authorship. And in fact, there were a lot of humanists who were studying 4th and 5th century writings as well as Greek theologians' interpretations. And so, it's clear, it seems quite clear based on the circumstantial evidences and the clear writings written like about 20 years later after the first edition was published that Durer seems to have been discussing with his close humanist friends in Nuremberg and talking about the apostolacity of the very last book of the Bible. But then, if you actually clarify that too obviously, then the church will see you as being a non-Christian, right? So I see this as like a secret discourse happening before the dawn of the Reformation. With this growing humanistic study of the Bible, going back to the original Hebrew and Greek text, and also the growing Greek scholars coming to Europe with whom like Durer's very important humanist friend and writer, Willibald Pirkheimer in Nuremberg was also studying, as well as the reformers' writings from 1519 and 20 all indicate that Durer was very well aware of this secret discourse, questioning the very validity of the traditional belief of the St. John of the Revelation as St. John the Evangelist. So this is actually something that I have been very much interested in the past years and have been focusing on. Again, like for instance, like this image that Durer used as the first image representing the text has been used by Protestant Reformation Bible, but then excluding the book included here because that's not written in the text. But still, because Durer's predicates of the Apocalypse were served as models for Reformation, Protestant Reformation Bibles, it has often been seen as the anti-papal, although we do not believe that anymore. And also in the past, it has been perceived as mainly reflecting the belief of the end of the world coming. But then if he really believed the end of the coming, why did he actually invest so much money? Right? So I also, because I mean, it was like a dog-eat-dog world of this early printing industry. So you had to spend so much money, and then if you cannot distribute and sell so that we can recoup your investment, you're ruined. You really go bankrupt. It happened to so many printers and publishers. So I see that this is more of the humanistic discourse. We all know that Durer was integral part of the humanistic movement in Nuremberg, which was a major humanistic center, as well as artist center and the trade center. And so I'm questioning whether this is actually a reflection of the end of the world, but more like the reflection of a late medieval piety affected by this growing philological study of the Bible. So thank you so much. And do you have questions? I think I finished before 12 today. I tried my best. Anyway, I wanted to leave ample room for your questions. I know that the very ending part can be controversial, if especially you are a devout Christian. Anyway, yes, you have questions.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
what is the relationship that the church had to the publishing of this? Were they against it? Were they offended by it?
So,
Because, I mean, in Italy
yeah.
at the same time, the
Right.
church
Right.
funded a lot of artists to work.
Right, right.
So obviously contrary
Right.
to that relationship.
Yeah. So, as you know, if you say or write something that is against the church fathers' view or the dogma, then you can be excommunicated, as happened to Luther about 20 years later, right? So, what I see is that how was the secret discourse conveyed and discussed? So what I have read is that 13th and 14th century, the kind of characteristics we see in this secret discourse, whether in writing or image, is the discrepancy and omission. And here, there are a lot of things that Durer deviate from the regular rules. So actually, in like a more like in lengthier version of this talk, I point out all the omissions and then the changes from the set rule, and how there are certain discrepancies that are clarified, and the contradictions within them. For instance, the contradiction between the image of St. John on the title page of 1511 and the images of John within the book, and the very separation of St. Jerome's prologue from the rest of the book, and the choice of the martyrdom scene rather than showing St. John riding on Patmos. The all ways of downgrading his role as a writer, and also making a discrepancy so that people start to wonder why, and thereby facilitating the very conversation about these issues. And in fact, if you know this, you would be able to detect them, because people of the 15th and 16th century would have known this text, and they have known the theological interpretations much better than we do. Very different audience, especially understanding that Erasmus and Luther, they were all coming from the very same philological background. And so Durer, being part of that group, his friends must have also been discussing the same issues. In fact, Erasmus and Durer were connected through Nuremberg humanists like Willibald Pirkheimer. He's seen as the arch-humanist in Germany, and he happens to be Durer's patron. And Erasmus, around the 1500, described Durer as the Apelles, the Greek artist. So there is a clear indication that Erasmus knew Durer, Durer knew Erasmus, and Durer was part of this very intellectual group in Nuremberg, in which also there were humanists who were interested in the reform of the church in a small regional way. So then I see Durer's, print carrying this secret discourse that could not be expressed very clearly yet. But the kind of the boiling questions, and not accepting church fathers' long-standing acceptance and the view as it is, but questioning, the very questioning spirit of the time seems to be indicated in this way. But he doesn't want to be excommunicated, right? Want to be in the part of this. And how do you create the discourse? I see this, knowing that there were always these concerns about the misuse of the book of Revelation at the time of this millenarian views, and this was the time. So I see very strongly that Durer and his humanist friends were interested in diminishing the apostolacity of this, the last book in the Bible. Does it make sense to you? Yes. Yes.
Well, what about Durer and Luther?
Mm-hmm.
Was he familiar with
Right.
Luther's thought before the excommunication?
Probably not, but Durer was a very adamant follower of Luther. When first, around 1519 and 20, he was always like collecting his books. So he writes letters to his friends asking for the newest writings by Luther to be sent to him. He begged that. And he was outraged when Luther was supposed to be killed. And so he was outraged. But Durer is a very, very complex man. It shows that at the start of the Reformation movement, he was completely with them. He was an adamant follower of Luther. But as the Protestant Reformation goes too violent and getting into many different sects, he starts to come back to the Catholicism. So there he is on the one hand, he's very superstitious. He believes in the miracles and magics and all that, and probably the end of the world. But at the same time, he's very rational, following the Reformation movements started by Luther. But then he also sees the trend that is created, right? And so he starts to be also critical of the movement. And by the end of his life, around 1528, there are plentiful of indications that he was going back to the Catholicism, believing the ecclesiastical authority. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I do know that woodcuts and other prints, they wear down and during the printing process. So I'm fascinated, have you run into anything with the second print? Did he have to recreate those prints?
No. Right. So he recycled, right? Right. The same wood blocks, but just he added that one image for the title page. In fact, in 1511, he printed other series. I tried to make this very short, so I didn't show you, but in 1511, he printed 2 additional large-scale prints, A Large Passion and The Life of Virgin Mary, again, in the largest folio size. This is facsimile edition, so it shows the actual size. In this case, Durer's prints were so popular that later on, the images were cut from and then separately sold and collected. But so this actual size is like this, and the Large Passion and Virgin Mary were also printed in the same size. Like that, the contemporaries called super regal, the largest size of a paper that was available here. So again, shows that the reason why Durer printed all at the same time, 3 series, would be that it would be cheaper to buy papers all together and print them together. He didn't own typefonts. They were very expensive properties at the time. So he had to borrow them, right? And then he can also sell them. It had to be distributed by donkeys and carts and so on to be distributed other parts of Europe. So it again shows how he was economizing the very business side of it. Not only just the making part, but also distribution part and the sales part. In fact, the part that I'm most interested about Durer is as a self-publisher. And the self-publisher at this time means then that you are the investor. But by becoming a self-publisher, he can actually own the very wood blocks that he had to create, and he will get the profits from it. But in general, if you are not the self-publisher this time period, artists who designed the woodcuts didn't even get the credits most of the time. So their names would not appear. So even if you put monograms, as your works start to disseminate further away from your native town, the very name for which this monogram stands for would be forgotten. A lot of times, we do not know who provided the illustrations for printed books, illustrations. But as a publisher, I didn't mention it, but at the very end, there's a colophon in which he says this book is printed by Albrecht Durer in Nuremberg in 1498. And then in 1511. So making a strong connection between his monogram and his name. So that, and I see the very connection given in this marginal book properties that graphic artists did not have, gave Durer incentive to publish it together. So that on the one hand, he can get a full credit of authorship over these large works that he created with such care and attention. And so that he can control everything from quality design to authorship to profit, everything. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much for another provocative lecture.
Thank you.
I have two questions
Yeah.
to follow. The first one is,
Yeah.
The first question is, where is there is an original, where are they now?
Okay, good question. Certain prints, like woodcuts, have their wood blocks survive, but Apocalypse does no longer have, the wood blocks for these prints no longer survive. But some wood blocks survive, include such as the Samson killing the Nemean lion, has wood block. It's actually at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, so you can actually see the blocks. Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
As a follow-up question, is it, your slides, are they as bright as they are because they're slides?
Yeah.
But were the originals as bright?
Yeah.
Because they're so,
Yeah.
the illumination and the shading and
okay.
that sort of thing is so beautiful.
Yeah, good question. Actually, some are, like this one is from the, I think it's from a copy, like the facsimile edition. But some other times, I actually borrowed from like the Metropolitan Museum copy. So like some are wider, it looks wider because either because it's actually copy of a copy, or sometimes it's because the paper was bleached later on to clear. So like there are variations. So these illustrations, the reproductions really do not justice, and there are variations. And yeah.
So could it be more, the original perhaps be as dark as that perhaps?
It could be, yes, yeah, yeah. But yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You did a great comparison to modern day movies like
Yeah.
movies in the 1920s to
Yeah.
the computer
Yeah.
imagery now. You compared him to Quinnell's.
Yes, yeah.
Was there anything in between Quinnell and Durer? Or was it so dramatic a change
Right.
in style?
Exactly. So like definitely the reason why it was so popular would have been the artistic value and innovation. Such a huge, you can see that this is real quantum leap. Right, right, right. So as you can see, these kind of books would not have been too cheap for ordinary people, but cheap enough for the middle class or well-educated upper middle class would be able to buy. Women tended not to know Latin most of the time, right? So they would be buying the German edition, right? But if you are university educated intellectuals, you would choose Latin because this was the lingua franca, right? So, but then whether you are well educated or just regular people with just simple piety and belief in superstition, you would be fascinated by these scenes that help you to imagine the end of the world. The kind of the terrors that the priest always sermon every Friday, Sunday. Right? Yeah.
Comparison was
Right.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Really,
Yeah.
you can easily see that.
Right. Yeah.
So did Quinnell begin copying his
So,
style?
no. So the first images printed in these German Bibles coming out from 1479. But then these wood blocks were also borrowed and lent from one publisher to another. So the same images appear in Strasbourg, published by Gruninger. So it's called the Gruninger Bible. And then in 1485, Anton Koberger in Nuremberg borrowed them and then used them again. It's just in different orders sometimes. Right? Because making these wood blocks required a lot more money. You have to have an artist design them, and then there's a wood cover, Fulcrum Schneider, who's actually carving them, and then put them together with a type font. What I did not explain is that the text has to be printed, and then the woodcut had to be printed on top. So it has to be aligned together, going through the process twice. So it's a very complicated process, as you can see. So it means then that it requires a lot of money that you cannot recoup until you actually sell these books, right? Yeah. Like which one? Like a Durer's Apocalypse? That is a very tricky question because, yeah. Okay, so theoretically, you can print as many as you want, usually over 1,000, like 1,500. But then if they're really printed that much, and then the wood blocks, the lines started to damaged, you're not going to get the same quality. And also, if you print it too much, then what are you going to do with the leftovers? They're not sold, right? So there are a lot of things that need to be calculated in engravings too, right? So this is like a fine balance. Would Durer have printed as many prints as possible, or would he have printed as much he could sell, right? So there are all these questions. Yes. Yes.
The portrait we saw.
Yeah.
He was
Right.
older.
Right.
He did his first works at 27, the first publication.
Yes, right. That does not mean that was his first work.
No,
Yeah,
well,
right.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
The point I was trying to make is, was he commercially successful?
Oh, yeah.
In his artwork?
Oh yes. Oh, yeah.
So this did not influence his fame and acceptance by society as an artist.
This is the Apocalypse is the breakthrough work in his career. Right. Right. I mean, with this, he just the name recognition just soared. This was the work that really made him. He was only 27. It wasn't the first work. He made other prints as an independent master from around 1495-6, but he was recognized. But with 1498 publication of Apocalypse, it just completely changed. He was recognized everywhere in Europe. It's an incredible, yeah.
He had commissions to do paintings and
Right.
anything he wanted.
Right, but not exactly, but he was also commissioned with a major painting project, like, altarpieces and things like that. But he himself said in one letter that if he made prints rather than painting this altarpiece so that nobody can see, he would have been 1,000 guilders richer and things like that. So he was very aware of the power of prints as a ways of spreading his fame, as well as making more money.
Was he financially secure prior to?
That I cannot tell you exactly, but he was definitely very wealthy. And he was very financially very successful throughout his career, but at the same time, he was always anxious about money. And he actually recorded all his spendings when he traveled, for instance, to Netherlands. And he was always trying, he was a very, very savvy man. And he was a great businessman. He wrote down everything that he spent for food and how much he spent to cross the border, et cetera, et cetera.
One other thing, the significance of the number 7?
Yes, definitely. So that's another, throughout the book of Revelation, the number 7 plays a very significant role, right? So in Durer's work, we also see the important role of 7 as a number, like whether it's the number of the St. John being depicted and so on. This is, that's very significant.
Is there a reason?
So that would be related to interpretation of the book of Revelation, right? So, yes. there are a lot of questions today.
You
Yeah.
indicated that some of the Dürer
Yeah.
blocks are still in existence.
Yes.
I assume that they are being owned at
Yeah.
museums.
Yes, definitely.
Is it possible
Yeah.
to make additional copies with those? And if yes,
Yeah.
what would be the value?
I do not know actually, but they often don't do that, I think, right? So I do not know exactly whether, what value that would be. Yeah. So like certain wood blocks we know remained intact until like 17th century. So we also see the new editions coming out even in the like 1620 something in Venice. The Small Passion series Dürer printed in 1511. Yeah.
But not recently, nobody has attempted it.
I don't think so. So like this one is a facsimile edition created in 1971, the 500th anniversary of Dürer's birth. And this type of facsimile was made using the prints, not the wood blocks. Right. Yeah. Right.
So that's the wood.
Wood block is the wood. Yeah.
We have here.
Yeah. This is the print. Woodcut. Yeah. Woodcut. Yeah. Right.
From the wood.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's the date on that?
Oh, so this one is most likely 1511 edition. Like on the back, there is this the typeface that we can see, and using analyzing the type font, we can see whether it's a 1498 or 1511. It's something that only like experts who actually have hands-on these different editions can tell. So it's not that all the Apocalypse has text on the back, because there were also proofs that he printed before printing as the book, and it also seems that he's printed the images alone to sell separately. Right.
He was a good businessman.
Yes, he was. Yes.
I had a question, because
Yeah.
it seems like the image and the religious text go in
Yeah.
tandem. And I'm curious, how much of an effect did these images have on the faith at the time? We're talking about millions of people who may have been affected by this, hundreds of thousands, 200,000. I mean,
That would not be that great number, because the literacy level was so much low at this time, right? So, and the people, vast majority of people did not own a book to begin with, even if it's illustrated, right? So only people of a certain means could buy this, right? And then how would they affect it? It's hard to tell, really. But what's clear is that they are very popular. What I did not say is that 1510, another artist actually plagiarized Dürer's. It's just the images are a little bit cruder, but it's almost close. And I guess he was hasty, so he didn't print the old text as it is, but shortened that, right? But nevertheless, Dürer saw the necessity to reprint, meaning that it was very popular, right? And in fact, in many different inventories of artists from 16th century, we see different artists, craftsmen, as well as humanists owned Apocalypse. In the inventory, we can see that, showing that Dürer's Apocalypse was popular not only as a devotional object, but also as the model for artists. So many artists, from stained glass maker to the Mallorca maker to a painter to printer, borrowed motifs or whole composition from Dürer's Apocalypse. Yeah. But how many people were affected? That would be a difficult question to answer. Yes.
The answer is all of them.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
How much of his hand physically was involved in preparing the blocks? I mean, he had a lot of technicians helping with the atelier.
Right. Actually, that's one of the most controversial issues about Dürer's Apocalypse. So, because as you could see, in comparison with other prints of this time period, including the Schatzbehalter or the treasure chests printed in 1491, we do not see any of this caliber of craftsmanship carving these wood blocks. before Durer's apocalypse. So people wondered whether it's Durer himself who carved this wood block. But then later on, as he gets more famous and busier, he stopped carving the wood blocks by himself. Or is it that a traveling woodcarver who actually made this? So there's, right, it's just so exceptional, right? And we know later on, like around the 1510, he actually hired other woodcarver, professional woodcarver, we know that. And he was one of the major collaborators with Durer, Andrea Vogelschneider. Even his last name is Vogelschneider, meaning woodcarver. So we know that after 1500, he clearly had he hired professional carvers. But what about 1498? It's one of the most controversial issues. But then another, okay, can I keep going? Okay, so another thing that clear is that Nuremberg was one of those free imperial cities in Holy Roman Empire, meaning that unlike other cities, whether in Italy or Germany or Netherlands, artists did not have to belong to the guild. So traveling artists from other cities could come and be active. Right? So meaning that we do not have all the records of these artists who are working temporarily, whether as a journeyman or hiring hands. But then at the same time, Nuremberg was also important place where the sculptors made artistic innovations. Like Weitstoss and these artists was a significant force in rejuvenating the carved altarpieces here. So there have been questions whether it's Weitstoss, one of the major German sculptors, who actually carved this, or somebody we do not know, anonymous artist who actually carved this, or is it Durer? So because we want to believe in the genius of Durer, we want to see this was actually done by Durer, right? But then is it realistic? Right? But with engraving, we know he himself carved it. The fact that his father was a goldsmith also explains that from early on, he was adept at and trained to actually carve the copper, basically. The same technique is being used, right? But with Apocalypse, who carved it is actually one of the most controversial issues. Yes. Yeah.
What was the quality of the carving in Italy at the same time?
So Italy too, there was nobody like Durer. Yeah. I mean, he completely changed he showed the potentials of woodcut as artistic medium. Before him, nobody did this, right? The engraving, yeah, there were other great engravers, but not with woodcut, yeah. I'm not just saying that because he's my artist. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.